Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. My name is Julia, and I am the Activities Director at the Yale Club. We are very excited to be starting this virtual lecture series where we bring in live speakers to do a presentation and Q&A that you can participate in from your homes. Tonight, we are excited to welcome Gabe Polsky, class of '02, who is the director, producer, and writer for the film In Search of Greatness, which I hope you all had the opportunity to watch already. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Gabe.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the film, and hope that you all, got some things out of it that maybe you didn't think of, haven't thought too much about before, and were able to, maybe see kind of sports and the greatest athletes maybe in a way that you haven't really been thinking about, and so that was sort of the idea. As I wanted to make a film that I felt addressed things that weren't really being addressed, especially in sport, and the idea of creativity, uh, and parenting, genetics, psychology, but particularly, you know, the idea of looking at sport and performance and the nature of greatness, and how important, creativity and experimentation is, and in sport, both kind of the reason why I liked sport to begin with, and I also played hockey at Yale, and played throughout my life. But the reason why I would always go to the stadium and watch hockey on TV or other sports is I wanted to see something really surprising and brilliant, something creative happen on the you know on the playing field, and to me that was really what were the memories that I took from sport. Not really like how many, what the score was or all the stats or whatever. It was more kind of the imagery and sort of the amazing creativity that I would see from the greatest athletes of all time. But you know going through competitive sports and school as well, and I kind of linked the two together. I noticed kind of even the higher and higher I got in both fields, the less kind of emphasis there was on creativity, and no one was really talking about how important it was, especially in sport, right? And I found that to be a paradox, because I noticed, growing up, that the biggest creative expressions that were happening were from the greatest athletes of all time, and yet that wasn't something that people were focused on. And in fact, when you were trying to be creative in let's say sports, oftentimes you were benched, or it was looked down upon. They wanted you to conform, and that was sort of, the better you were at sort of conforming to the authority, I think a lot of times the higher you got, and I think very similar with education too. But then you notice that the people who were actually having tremendous success were people who were doing things differently. So anyways, I wanted people to realize that how important it was, creativity, and so at the same time allow young kids to experiment and be creative, so that they have more fun and enjoy sports more and develop their creative abilities, but B, so that the results are better, because we all want to see better and more interesting creative expression on the field. So anyway, so I decided to go about, and I knew that no one was going to listen to Gabe Polsky, graduate of Yale, not the greatest Yale hockey player, but they were going to want to see the greatest athletes of all time, and hear what they had to say. Wayne Gretzky, Pelé, Jerry Rice, Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, to really understand kind of the true essence of who they are and what their creativity is. And so I went and obviously interviewed a number of them, and found that they really were tremendously excited to talk about the subject matter, because I don't think they really get asked these kind of questions that often. They also really realize how vital it is to who they are as people, and the child instinct inside of them is what really not only drove them, because that's where the passion came from the very beginning, but also it's their imagination and creativity that propelled them into the greatness. So I guess that's my way of getting this discussion started, and I'd love to kind of hear if you guys kind of what you guys got out of the film, and also, you know, what other any questions you might have.
So we had one question that came through the chat, so let's start with that one. One person commented that your film focuses a lot on greatness in sports, but of course the search for greatness extends beyond sports. Now, how would you say that this applies to other professions as well?
Yeah, like let's talk education, for instance. You know, many people have reached out to me saying that it's the exact same principles that are happening in education, that with all these standardized tests, you know, the people that are incredibly successful are often ones that don't necessarily test the highest, or, you know, but oftentimes, you know, that creativity isn't really emphasized in school, and as a result, you're sort of you're eliminating, you're not only you're weeding out people at an early age to, let's say, you know, different opportunities, but also, you know, the need for developing, you know, one's, let's say, improvisational abilities, your ability to adapt to changing situations, and that's what creativity is being, having a flexible mind, and being able to connect different dots in different areas, you know, that doesn't necessarily that's not
What?
necessarily taught well in
Sure.
schools, you know. Are you guys hearing some feedback?
Yes, so if anyone is not asking a question at the moment, please do mute yourself so that we don't have as much background noise. You can do so at the bottom left of your corner, just click on the microphone. On the other hand, if you do have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask that now.
But also, to add to that, I mean, if you look at business, or literally any other field, the exact same principles of the movie apply. And you know, whether it be, you know, how important is genetics, how important is that you have such a fast mind that's able to process. I mean, yeah, it is important, all these things are important, but there are many other ways to have success that aren't necessarily your standard measurement models of that, you know what I'm saying? And the people that really reinvent their fields are ones that kind of are able to they may look weak on the surface, like they have all these peculiarities and weaknesses, but yet they somehow use them to go into survival mode and figure out their own creative way to handle things. I mean, I know for myself, like in education, you know, there were certain weaknesses that I had, and I compensated in other ways. Like I wasn't necessarily the, you know, the quickest student, but I could put concepts together in my mind, and I understood things conceptually a lot better, where I wasn't necessarily the quick, had the quickest motor computational skills, you know.
Yeah, I asked that question, and I found the movie fascinating and this topic fascinating because when I interview, so when I interview young lawyers coming in out of law school, one of the questions I'd like to ask is, describe a time for me when you've been creative. And you would think that I'm asking them a question that's like, you know, how do you solve the Middle East peace crisis? Right? I mean, they look at me and it's as if they've never, they hesitate. Most people just pause and have a really difficult that time answering a question about how could I ever think that as a young lawyer ever had a chance to be creative. And I'm not even asking about in their practice or in their studying or anything. I just find it really tough for, you know, very talented, and successful, young professionals to be able to answer a question when they've really been required to be creative. So I was just kind of fascinated by what you've seen in different disciplines aside from sports.
Yeah, I mean, I know that in my own field now with filmmaking, obviously there's that, everyone can the title of an artist is like, synonymous with creativity, but there are so many other decisions that I've got to make every day, even legal decisions that, that are happening, and you can't just like be freaking out at every surprise. It's you have to like, learn how to adapt to so many different stimuli, and how to deal with situations, and it's just like an infinite amount of variables, and you're never going to have a rule book to anything, and you've got to learn how to develop your intuition, your all sorts of things. And I think the more people understand the need and reason why you need to be creative, I think the easier and more the easier life you'll have, but the more productive you'll be. A lot of people, but then again, a lot of teachers, the problem is they they want you to follow orders because they feel threatened by somebody who's maybe doing things a little bit differently, and instead of sort of saying, hey, what, being open-minded about it, and let's take a look at that. And I think it's those people that are more open-minded tend to be better leaders and coaches. And I think the more people that watch the film can understand these ideas, the better, I think, the better experiences people will have with life, I guess. Because the film to me is just as much about any kind of mental health as it is about greatness, and I think the two are somewhat synonymous. To a degree. There's a lot of artists that are tormented, and they still seem to kind of produce very interesting expression, but
And we have another question from the chat. Sean is asking if you have seen any trends that you have noticed with parenting or general upbringing with these athletes that you interviewed. For example, how common was familial support in the aspiration of their dreams?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has their own kind of very specific story, but it seemed to be that a lot of the parents were supportive. Obviously they were supportive, but I think in a non kind of pushy way. One of the main things in the film is, if the parent could give them a little bits of wisdom, that help them a little bit along their journeys, that's great. But it's very clear that greatness can't be forced. It's something that has to come from within, that passion and motivation. And so the key is really, it seems like, to just allow your kids to be, and give them some opportunities to expose them to different areas, and allow them to imagine and sort of do their own playing, and not get too involved, because that has to come from within. Again, it cannot be forced, or you can't necessarily manufacture it. The one exception that it seems to me, because I constantly keep thinking about this, is Tiger Woods' father, and he's sort of notoriously, was notoriously involved with Tiger, and that, was sort of, coaching him and teaching him from a very young age, and almost like, it's same with Mr. Williams, or Venus and Serena Williams' father was very, very hands-on, and that works. But the kids themselves were very passionate about it as well, so it kind of, it seemed to be mutually beneficial. Does that kind of answer the question?
I believe it does. Thank you so much. I would actually like to hear a little bit about how you chose these athletes that you interviewed. Obviously, they are some of the biggest names of their field, but why these specific ones, and were there any in particular that you wanted to speak with but you didn't get the chance to?
Yeah, so Gretzky, Pele, and Jerry Rice were definitely athletes that one rule of thumb I had was that I wanted to get the kind of undeniably the greatest athletes in the particular sports. I mean, obviously football with Jerry Rice, he's the best wide receiver, but there's so many different positions, so it's a little bit debatable in certain ways. But so they inspired me, and then secondly, I tried to get some more athletes like Serena Williams and there's a couple other women that I went after I wasn't able to get, and then Michael Jordan, Willie Mays, and a few others that I tried to get but was not able to do it. I met with Michael Jordan's manager, but he kind of notoriously wants more control over the product and would need final cut, and I didn't want to do that. So when I felt like I had enough athletes that I could still tell a great story, the one that I'd still get a very rich story. I felt like I could cover the other athletes, not necessarily with footage that I got, but with footage that I could put together and still get it. Like Michael Jordan, for instance, I was trying to think about who is this guy really about, and how can I include him in the story? What is unique about him that I haven't really understood before?
And we have a question from member Anne asking if you have seen a difference in how male and female athletes have achieved greatness.
Well, I mean, I use the example of Serena. I mean, everyone's got their own kind of story because they have their own very unique individual strengths and weaknesses. So with Serena, I think that, she plays very different than her sister. Her sister is more taller and lankier and had a lot of success before Serena, and Serena basically leaned, I think, on her strength, and that was her creative ability, really. I mean, she decided, I'm going to change women's tennis because I'm going to actually use my strength to dominate, and that was never done before. And I think that was incredibly creative because before, women weren't trying to use their strength. It was all about kind of having very it was just a different style, and so I thought that was cool that she really leaned on that strength that people look down, oh, that's not the way women are supposed to play, but it's great that she really was creative with her strength.
I think it's so interesting how you say that, because earlier in the film, we heard Gretzky saying how he focused on creativity more so than just the physical excellence and speed or strength, which is what's expected of the men, whereas for Serena, she had the strength and made use of it, which is also less expected of her in her field.
Exactly.
Gabe, question for you. By the way, the movie was wonderful. You did a great job. And I tend to be a fan of the performing arts. And over the years, particularly ballet, and in talking to professional dancers as a patron, which is really the only conversations, I find the one thing about them is what you were describing to me is very similar with them. In other words, they have that amazing creativity. They never stop. They're so competitive, but they have nothing else to talk about. And I didn't know whether the people that you interviewed, did you find that that was all you could really talk to them about? And I wonder, is that sort of a qualification to achieve that level of performance? Have you got to be that focused that your life doesn't have breadth, it just has that depth?
That's interesting. I didn't talk to them a whole lot about like other like things in life, like I don't know, like Gretzky even said, he said, I'm terrible at math, I don't understand how people can get 100% on their tests, and you know what I'm saying, like he becomes almost pathologically focused on his field, which I think, I mean, I don't know what field you're in, but I'm sure a lot of like scientists or businessmen, I know a lot of other businessmen, that's all they think about is they're insane. It's like, I guess I'm not that much like that with filmmaking, I'm very, very driven to make great work. But I don't know the level of insanity. Like Gretzky saying he went and watched every single game after every thing, and it was like it became mathematical, literally. Like he just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And when Rice said that all he thought about on his day off was football, and that he would dream it before he would perform it, and I sense that with very elite dancers. It's that thing.
When I played competitive hockey and sports, I mean, I would think in my head all the time, why am I going to Yale? Like if I want to, because I wanted to play professional hockey, and I felt like I had a talent to do so. But the fact of going to school, then having to dress up and play hockey and whatever. I mean, how do you master something if you're spending more than half the time at school? It's a very difficult thing to do. There's some people, do it, but I guess that's a very interesting thing. How is it the more time you spend on something, the more obsessed, that's the sacrifice you make, and literally you don't have a life beyond your field, whatever it is. I'm sure we all think about this, guys, and anything you're doing, you say, well, if I want to be the greatest or whatever, that's the time sacrifice. What you sacrifice, maybe some guys, your families, your anything else besides that, you're not gonna like have that rich life. But at least you could say at the end of the day, maybe I was one of the greatest at what I did. So but yeah, you're right. I was having a conversation with some other people the other day about hockey professionals, and he's like, Gabe, the thing about hockey players professionally, he would say, is that there's nothing to talk about. He said the same thing. I don't want to put it down, but yeah, it's I don't know, it's a strange thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's another good tie-in to a question from the chat, asking you to elaborate on what you thought motivated each of the participants. For example, you mentioned Michael Jordan was anger, but what about some of the other ones that you interviewed?
This is a little bit of some speculation. I know Gretzky said that I said, were you motivated like Michael Jordan? The guy was like an animal, like so he's kind of, I could tell his reaction, and it wasn't like that for him. He just like, he's very competitive, but it was more like he just loved the game. It was like more of a warmer connection to it, less about like trying to dominate everybody. Jordan was like such a dominator, like of individuals. He would like pick a guy and try to just dominate them. With Gretzky, it was more of a about teamwork and passing, and about like a different kind of motivation, but the same internal drive, you know what I'm saying, to succeed, but a little bit of a different motivation. Pelé may have been just purely to produce beautiful work on the field and to score goals, like he just loved pleasing people. He said he loved to please people. It's interesting how the source of motivation can be slightly different. But you still have to have that fire, that kind of, I need to have that ball, that performance. And then Jerry Rice was like, he just wanted to put the greatest show in the world out every Sunday, and like see the smiles on people's faces. It's a really like you mentioned with dance and everything. It's such a performance, and you've got, imagine with dancers, they've got so much fewer people in the audience. With football, they've got like 100,000 people or 60,000. That's a lot of people just focused on each play. That's an opportunity to perform, to like to give people something, a great memory.
Wonderful. So I think we have a question from Judy, if you would like to chime in.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a statement. I think it's a wonderful gift, a great, great gift, if someone finds something in which they're so passionate that they want to spend so much of their time. I don't think it's a drag for them. And frequently they do become very great in their particular arena. But I think more important, it's very, very, very nourishing for them. And I think it's terrific. At times when I hear someone criticize a person like this and say, well, that person should have a life. You know, they should get a life. Well, I think they have a life. They have a wonderful life and a rich life that many people are trying to find for themselves. So at any rate, that's my opinion.
I agree with that. And that comes back to, like, you know, mental health. Like, if you're doing something that you can be focused, you wake up every day and you're like, you feel like you've got a purpose, and it's like what you just want to do, what you want to figure out. It gives you a reason, and it makes you happy. So that is what it is. Now, I'm just speaking for myself, that I like the idea of having kind of a richer life, that I'm not just like so focused every day. Like, you know, the world is huge. You know, it's the unit. There's so much to do, and do I want to die like saying that all I did was play hockey or do this or make films? You know, like, the world is huge and big, but really it's whatever makes you happy. You know, and I personally, I have to ask myself, am I spending too much time, you know, on a Zoom with you guys, or why don't I just take a walk or go leave? You know, you make these sacrifices, and it becomes who you are. Do you guys have your own struggle like this, where you feel like, you know, sometimes you wish you had a little bit of a richer experience in life, that you did different things, or did you feel like you just wanted to do one thing? But a lot of times, like, when you achieve massive success, like Wayne Gretzky, any of these guys, now the door's open for the rest of their lives to do fun things, because A, they've got the money to do it, and B, they have open doors everywhere, because they've produced great art and memories.
So speaking a little bit about you, we had a question from Jack asking, can you speak a little bit about how you have carved out a unique space in making hockey documentaries? Have there been any other hockey films or documentaries that inspired you to make Red Army and cover Gretzky? And are there any other hockey documentaries that you are intending to make in the future?
Yeah, so I've seemed to carve out a niche with that, but I'm not. It's more by coincidence. I don't see myself as like a hockey doc person or a hockey movie guy. You know, I almost get mad at myself for doing all of these, but I want to do so many different powerful pieces. But I did make another film that will come out very soon, called Red Penguins, which is about Russia in the 90s, and about a crazy business deal between the Pittsburgh Penguins and this famous Red Army hockey dynasty. And it's a dark comedy. It's like Big Lebowski or Fargo, with crazy characters, about how the Pittsburgh Penguins in the 1993 tried to transform this Russian hockey dynasty into like a capitalistic machine, and with very crazy results. You see the mafia and all this stuff. It's just a really insane period of time. That's like a dark comedy that sheds light on U.S.-Russian relations and the nature of our cultural and psychological differences. That it's called Red Penguins, and you know, that's that. And then I hope to be making other powerful films that are unrelated to hockey. Maybe feature films next. I've made other feature films and other things unrelated to hockey before these last 3 documentaries. And I also want to tell everybody on this that if they liked In Search of Greatness, they're going to really like Red Army, which was my last film, which was very successful in 2015, about the rise and fall of the Soviet Union, and also about how a creative sport dynasty happened, the most creative maybe in history, the Soviet hockey dynasty, and how it was built on a creative philosopher of a coach who envisioned kind of a different style and way to play the game, which was more balletic and beautiful, a lot of passing and interesting things. But you know, again, it's not about sport. It's more about kind of, you know, the Soviet Union, Russia, and what this whole country is all about.
Great. And we have a question from David, wondering if any of these greats were motivated to participate because they knew of a different great that was participating.
Yeah, I think I used that a little bit. I think I actually, Wayne Gretzky wasn't even first. Jerry Rice is the first one, and then I think Gretzky came in. He had seen my last film, Gretzky, Red Army, and then I told him about Jerry Rice, and then Pele was the last one, and he was tough. It was a crazy story. I'm not going to get into it here, but yeah, that's the way it works. You get one, it helps get the other one, but it's very difficult to get these people. Even for, I only got about an hour and a half, maybe less, with each of them, and that's not a lot of time to kind of really get to the essence of it. Because imagine these guys, how many interviews they've given in their life, and how many times they've actually gotten really interesting about it and the nature of this stuff. So you don't have much time to craft a story. You got to really, this was like, imagine the kind of weaving that you've got to do to craft this kind of a story that's very conceptual. It was like, it's like connecting all these dots and still engaging people. You know, you're taking this journey, you don't even know what you're, you know, it's not like a narrative story where, okay, this happens and then this one, and it's very conceptual. So it's a whole nother weave, and you got to keep people engaged every moment, or they're going to not know what they're going to just tune out, especially the first, like, I don't know, 10 minutes. That's kind of a rule of thumb. If the audience kind of feels like you know what you're doing and it's engaging, they like the style, they like the music, they feel like they're in, that's what you got to do first 5 minutes, you know, 10 minutes at least.
So another question that I had was actually about your process of making the documentary. You mentioned it was very difficult to get these people in the room and you didn't have a lot of time with them. Do you typically start the process with the core idea, or has it been a time where throughout the course of the interviews you end up at a different end than you had originally planned on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, like, that's another, linking back to creativity, the way I make films, you always have to be open to that surprise, because if you're surprised, the audience is going to be surprised. If you're asking generic questions and you're sort of following a formula that you already have outlined, it's never going to be great. You're always looking for surprising stuff to happen. You're hoping for it. You're hoping to be kind of caught off guard, because that's the whole, you know, that's what great things are, and great moments in movies. So you got to have with this film, I did have to know the ideas that I was going to address to a degree, that because I didn't have much time with these guys, so I had to be very efficient. If I just go off in all these directions and then at the end of the day I don't have what I need, I think, you know, that's difficult. So I had to have enough direction but enough openness, and like I said, like, only an hour of footage, I have to cut this whole story together somehow, the story of greatness, you know. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I mean, in other films that I've made, it's that element of eyes, you know, that made those films great. If you see, there's always like these moments that were unusual, you know, that you remember. That's my son. Yeah.
Gabe, so I loved it. So thanks so much for putting it all together. I noticed that you made a mention. You talked a little bit about how when you were getting Jordan's camp, or trying to get Jordan on board, they wanted final editing cut. I realize that you're saying one of the things that you believe drove Jordan was his like anger and wanted to get like one over on people. I think that was like a very clear choice that you made. Do you feel that do you feel Jordan would have like pushed back on that specific thought that you have and what his motivating factor would be? Or do you
Oh
think he would
yeah,
be according with that?
100%. There's no
Yeah.
way that he would be down with that. Although he said that in his Hall of Fame speech.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it was so evident on this guy's face, and
Yeah.
you felt that in the room. Like he wanted people to know that. So I don't know, but I think maybe the way that I use music and with the Incredible Hulk, and
Yeah.
that that creative treatment was a little. I wanted to emphasize it a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
so people really got it. And so yeah, I don't think he would have liked that, because it's almost like it's like it's the dark force, that he transformed, that he used that dark force. But you could tell, I mean, that's. But nobody ever talks about that. I mean, yeah, they say, "Oh, Jordan was so competitive," da 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 da. But it's the way that you see his face that you contextualize it. Like, I know that they're coming out with a Jordan documentary soon, ESPN, and everyone's excited about it. I'm so curious, what
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah.
because you could tell a whole story, Jordan's story. It's an 8-part episode, and not even really get to the essence of it, or you can get to the essence of it in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm not saying that I like what I achieved or anything, but I strongly believe that it takes, like, think about it. When you meet somebody, you shake their hand. I feel like you can get a sense of them almost by seeing them walk for 2 seconds.
Hmm.
I could tell a tremendous amount about somebody just by how they walk, what their posture is, very quickly.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
what I'm
No.
saying is that you could
Yeah.
tell somebody's real persona, what is, you know what I'm saying? Very.
No. Yeah. I definitely hear what you're saying. I would like I wish I would hear what he would think his
Yeah.
driving force would be to see, like, yeah, because you can clearly see it in the Hall of Fame speech, and even like it's a constant thing that most people know about, is like he wanted to prove his high school coach wrong for cutting him from the team, right? So it's always like this sense of revenge. But I would be interested to see what what his thought on his like motivation factor towards his greatness would have been. But I 100% get what you were
But he
saying.
did say, and sorry to go on, but he did say, like, this guy thought he was better than me, or this coach didn't
Yes,
include me.
yeah.
Who do you think you are? Like,
Yeah.
I
Cool.
don't know.
Yeah, no, thank you for answering.
Yeah.
So we had another question from the chat asking if there were any clips that you got with the people that you interviewed that you particularly liked, but you weren't able to put into the final film.
Yeah, like, oh God, it's been a little while now, so I don't remember exactly specifically things, but these guys, one interesting thing is that I asked them if they were like religious believers, or in something, what would they, and they all were religious. They said that they were religious. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know, it didn't fit in my story yet, but I thought that was interesting. None of them are Jewish, so.
Great. So do we have any other questions from the group? All right, Ellen first.
Just a quickie, and this might be a very, foolish question, but was there anybody else when you were finished with the movie or when you were making it, is there somebody who was the fish who got away? Somebody else that you wanted to put in that movie to make your point, who you just couldn't get to, or, their agent, whatever, couldn't cooperate? Or somebody perhaps you can't even tell
Well,
us.
I don't think that there's anyone that I didn't get, that I wasn't able to tell the story that I really wanted to tell, to be honest. I'm just be there were people. I think the movie might have been a little bit more successful if I had a woman, in there, and I tried to really find one that I really felt good about having in, and then I tried, but after a certain point I got rejected a few times. I didn't want to just get anyone just to have one, and then I don't feel great about it, because I just basically did whatever on, then people would sense that. They would sense the inauthenticity, because it doesn't quite fit in the film. I'm just doing it. So, but that's one thing. Yeah, that's basically, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Paul, go right ahead.
Yeah, just another quick question. I was curious to know where Walter Gretzky's singing at the end came in. Like, just looked like he was in a diner and he sang that Que Sera Sera song at the end. I'm just curious to know what the background of that was.
Yeah, I mean, we just basically found this clip, and I thought that it really illustrated the whole point of the movie, and so I just thought that it would be a really fun ending to it, kind of like a lesson, of the film, And so I just thought, wow, that was pretty good, And I thought it was kind of goofy, and I like to end my films on kind of a little bit humorous, a little, not taking yourself too seriously, and have fun, let people go in a nice way,
And another question from Jim.
Yeah, Jim. Yeah. Hey, Gabe. So I was definitely struck by like the innovation and the creativity of someone like Gretzky, but I was also just kind of shocked at probably his focus on the repetition and just going out there and spending, hours on a weekend, no matter what else, everyone else was doing. Um, and so how do you think about, maybe as a parent, since I have my 7-year-old sitting here next to me, how do you think about, like, in school, we've got a lot of, the schools seem to be very focused on the creativity, but I don't know. I also look at sort of the value of the repetition and going out there and, hitting 100 shots in the upper right-hand corner, like, that's just as valuable. So,
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
know. How do you
that is interesting. Yeah, and I'm trying to kind of fully understand the question, but I agree that the repetition kind of gives you, so it allows you to be more creative, because you don't have to think about how you're doing stuff, because everything becomes natural. So then you could actually just play, not even worry about those fundamental things, because you already know you've developed those skills, and then in order to be creative out there, then you can have your head up, you see how everything's moving. And if you don't have the fundamentals of math or whatever, you can't be a creative mathematician. You don't even know what you're doing. You have to have those fundamentals, and the fundamentals do take a lot of repetition. It's a question of whether you like that repetition. If you're a kid, you just hate it, you hate doing that, then that's not the right thing for you to be doing, I guess. You can't force that. You can't say, oh, you do it. You can explain and say, this is why, this is how you get good at something. You kind of explained it. That this is how Gretzky was good at. This is how Jerry Rice was good at, because he just did it over and over again, and it became. You explain the reason why. You don't just say go out and hit 50 pucks because you're going to be great. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's something innate.
They have to connect dots and then kind of try it themselves,
Yeah, no, I think it's something innate in there, and
yeah,
it's so it was kind of a statement, and partially due to what I learned from your movie and other research, but also a question to get your thoughts.
But a lot of parents, they don't even know how these greats became how they are. They don't even know, because they're not great themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, how I was not, so they don't even have that knowledge of that. At least here it's there. This is what they did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And because if you don't have the knowledge, then you're just totally in a vacuum, you know.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
And I have a question from David from the chat. Can you tell us about any experiences you had with any of your participants that didn't make it to the final film?
Any of their any experience they had that people weren't in the movie. Yeah, I mean, like Willie Mays, I met with a guy that is like his manager. I mean, none of this stuff is that interesting. Like, I met with a lot of like managers and agents, and like they were just so hard to get, and they just, I don't know, like either, like I tried to get Roger Federer, he was in the middle of his training or season, and they just, I don't know, it's hard to also like pitch this project, and you know, because it is sort of abstract, like, oh, this is about how you know, about the nature of greatness and whatever. Like, they probably have been pitched something like this before quite a bit, but I knew this was Gabe Polsky's, you know, creative version of it. It's going to be very powerful and very unique, and you'll never have done anything like this. You're going to regret it if you don't do it. And you know, I guarantee you, like I showed Landon Donovan this movie yesterday, and he was just like ecstatic about it. Basically, you show any of these athletes, they all like immediately understand the importance of it, that you know, in terms of how they were able to do what they did. It's how they view sport, and what creativity is, performance, you know. But I had a hard time convincing agents. There's no money in it. I didn't make any money. I mean, sorry to give too much information, you know. The film has gotten notoriety and it's on all the platforms, but you know, the documentary business is like not the most lucrative thing.
And then a question from Jack. Will you be working on any new documentaries in the near future?
Yeah, so I, as I explained earlier, this film Red Penguins is coming out soon. We're trying to figure out with the virus how it's affecting movie releases. So that's coming out, Red Penguins, and then yeah, I'm sort of looking at some other stories and possibilities. The most important thing to me is not to repeat myself, never to be telling a story in a similar way, and how can I keep expressing powerful stories with messages that are different each time, in a different way, in a different sort of tone or something, you know. I never want to be doing the same thing. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. So I think that is a great spot to end, unless we have any other questions. Doesn't look like it. So thank you so much, Gabe. I think it was a wonderful film. I think there's so much that we could take away from it. And I also love hearing about your process of making it. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and best of luck to everybody. Stay safe.
And thank you all again so much for joining us tonight. We have a lot more events coming up. Check out our calendar on the website to see what there is, and we hope to see you at one of them again soon. Stay home, stay safe, and stay connected. Have a good night.